Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First of all, sorry for the 5-minute delay. Welcome all to the 16th Licensing Committee. Any apologies? Thank you, Councillor. Any more apologies? Okay. Any late items to be introduced by the Chair? There's none by me. Declarations of interest? I'll take that as a no. Point 4, minutes of the meeting held on 8th of July 2021. Michael, that's over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just did want to pick up on one section of the minutes from last time, the request for an update in relation to the impact of the COVID pandemic on the licensed trade. We had reported at the last meeting that it might be preferable to hold off on any update until the pandemic was over. We are still not at that point, and bearing in mind some of the information that's emerged this week, I think it's difficult to identify when we might get there. So with that in mind, I thought it might be just helpful to provide some brief information to committee. If that's okay. It's not a lot, but it just gives a bit of info. So just to say that across officers from across the council alongside partner agencies have provided advice and guidance to premises throughout the pandemic period to help them trade safely. And new operating arrangements have been developed with them to facilitate the use of things like temporary structures and extended pavement dining areas. I have asked colleagues in our regeneration team to look at what support the council have provided licensed businesses under our discretionary grant schemes. They are working on that for us, but I understand that it's likely that the majority of support will have been delivered through the central mandated schemes as opposed to needing support from the local discretionary funds that we have been able to provide too. So we will get that information and we can report that back to a later committee. From an initial look at our local records since the first lockdown to this week, 6 licences have lapsed due to insolvency and 32 licences have been surrendered. So those 38 cases represent around 4% of the total number of premises that we currently licence, which is 877. But, you know, the caveat to sort of add to that is, of course, it's not possible to ascertain if COVID was a sole factor in those licences either being surrendered or those businesses going insolvent. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Can we move the minutes as printed on? Has anybody got any questions? We have to
move as printed, Chair.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Khan. Item 5, draft street trade and consent policy. Is that over to you, Angie? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The matter for today's meeting is something different from what we usually deal with, although this year so far we have done everything from gambling to taxis to boat licensing, so we can't say that licensing isn't interesting. For those people who are not familiar with this element of licensing, street trading is defined in legislation as the selling or exposing or offering for sale of any article. That can include a living thing in a street. Nowadays, these are usually our small businesses such as food traders and flower sellers. As with any other legislation, there are some exemptions. While we obviously want to support small businesses, we must also be able to control where and how those businesses operate and use powers to be able to enforce our controls where necessary. To be able to manage this type of operation, a council must firstly adopt the provisions laid out in Schedule 4 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982. This has to be approved by full council, and so you will see from the recommendation later the referral to full council on the 22nd of September. In adopting the provisions, the council is also permitted to designate where those street trading places are situated, and even prohibit streets from the provision if it so wishes. In 1984, the council did in fact make such a resolution adopting this legislation and defined some areas situated within the council's boundary as consent streets. Some of these were Derby City and Pride Park. Those areas were designated with consent streets. Over time, and through the transferring of responsibilities to different departments, historic plans and subsequent amendments, the council's current position is not clear. Because of this, and the change in the dynamics of the city since 1984, it is felt the right time to re-evaluate the whole provision into how and where street trading takes place. A draft policy has been created with the input from other departments and is ready to undergo a 12-week consultation period. Authorities such as the police and fire, as well as our disability networks and the general public, will be able to have their input into how and where we move forward with opening up the city safely while still supporting our small businesses. We currently have 26 traders, which I have detailed for you. These traders will be contacted directly regarding the consultation of the new proposed policy, and where possible, existing positions will be retained. Obviously, where that is not possible, we'll mediate with the business and try and enter into find a suitable option for them. As I've said, it's proposed that the draft policy will undergo a full 12-week consultation period, and the results will be referred back to this committee early next year. The consultation will be available online, and paper copies will be available for those who need it. It's worth remembering that, as with any policy, it is a fluid document and can be revised at any time, should we want to add any streets to it, or should we want to prohibit streets to it, obviously taking into account any future regeneration. So I'm therefore asking the committee today to recommend the following resolution to Council on the 22nd, and that is to re-adopt the provisions of Schedule 4 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982 in relation to street trading, which shall apply to Derby with effect from April 2022. Also to approve the attached draft street trading policy for release for consultation purposes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Angie. Has anybody got any questions? Councillor Hasselgrave?
This is a fair way down the line because there's going to be a consultation and streets will be added. But I think you said after the consultation and it starts running as a policy and is in effect, that there might be streets that are added. Yep. I just wanted to ask, will we be delegating powers to officers to do that without reference to the committee?
That will be something that we can obviously take into consideration over the consultation period, and if it's wished or preferred that that sort of decision does come to this committee, then I'm sure we can so delegate that.
Thank you, Angie. Anybody else got any questions? Councillor Khan.
You know, street trading, where would this come in if some charities or some collection, door-to-door people go? Would that come under trading or would that be separate?
Street collections are a separate piece of legislation. This street trading is specifically for those vendors that are on the street, as I say, such as flower sellers or the food traders.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any more questions? Councillor Pitfield.
Thank you, Chair. You've provided a list of existing consent holders. Do we have a map as to where we see the the consented streets and the unconsented streets, and will that map affect any of the current traders?
We don't actually have those plotted at the moment, and that's purely because of the frustrated situation that we are in at the moment with the lack of historic files. So redrafting and readopting this legislation will ensure that we have that clarity. I have included in the actual draft policy the streets on which current traders are already cited. So it is hoped that those streets will remain in the policy moving forward.
Thank you again, Angie. Any more questions from anybody? Councillor Skelton?
Just one point about in the definition of street trading, being able to offer for sale any article, including a living thing. Now, we do have policies as a council regarding we don't allow circus animals on our own land and various other things restrictive-wise. In fact, Michael and I had a conversation about this not long ago. And I don't think any of us would want to be seeing living things being sold on the street. So can we also think about that to make sure that our existing policy is brought into this? I mean, plants, I don't mind, obviously, but, you know.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, Councillor, and again, that is something that can be looked at, possibly included in, I think it sort of goes back historically, I think probably even earlier than 1984, where there were chickens running around and such like. So I think we've moved forward in that element.
Michael?
Yeah, just to add on to what Mrs. Rawson has said, yeah, I mean, the definition in the legislation is the definition. You know, we can't change that. But obviously, as a council, we would have to take into consideration those other resolutions that the council has adopted since then. So clearly, what the concerns that you are raising will be taken into account. Okay, I take it there's no more questions. Okay, moving on to the next item. Item 6, exclusion of press and public, to consider a resolution to exclude the press and public during consideration of the following item. Sorry? Could we just formally do the recommendation? Yes, sorry, I beg your pardon. Are we happy to approve the recommendation what Michael's put in? Yep. And also the release for consultation. Are we all happy with that? Thank you. Okay, item 6. Is it over to you, Emily? Is it over to you, Lucy? Just give me 1 second, Councillor. Okay, exclusion of press and public, to consider resolution to exclude the press and public during consideration of the following item. That's under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public will be excluded from the meeting during discussion of the following item on the grounds that it involves the likelihood of disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So yes, do we vote? Councillor Cooper.
Mark Frencher, cheers. Can we have a vote on this? And I would like it recorded, please.
Okay.
Okay, yep. All right, then I'll read the names out. Councillor Up. Okay, if I call the names out, if you could just let me know whether you want to go into private session or not. Okay, Councillor Bettany?
Can I just ask a question first?
Sorry.
Okay, just ask a question first. but understand that there's been an agreement reached, and it does say in the papers that it's been informally resolved. So I don't see why it should be going to a vote to make it either public or private. It's already been arranged that that's the resolution.
It's just to exclude the press from the meeting, for now.
Righto.
That's what that's for.
Okay, Councillor Bettany? Just to exclude the press? Yes. Yes. Councillor Cooper?
I'm against sweeping this under the carpet, so I would like this to be held in public session.
Councillor Graves?
Abstain?
Councillor Hazelgrave?
I think this is ultra-virus to actually decide whether it's public or private. I'm against it being public.
Chair, may I call for an adjournment so I could just brief the committee, please?
Yes, please.
Just bear with me while I stop the recording.